I always say that this theater is safety ring. It's really something that can switch my mind from the bad news and what is happening to a beautiful topic of creativity.
I'm Elena Shubina. I'm theatrical producer, around 10 last years, creative producer of big events, and organizer of tours of different theatrical companies.
I'm Polina Shubina. I'm a cultural manager, creative producer, and a sailor. And together with my mom, I've been working on this Teatrino project, toy theater project, for a couple of years now. In a way, Teatrino, it's not just a toy, but it's a big project. It's like an umbrella project with many directions where you can go. And as soon as it's just got born, we're kind of figuring out where it will go. But in general, it's a toy theater. It's a table theater in which one can play as a family or with friends, children, with adults, or in a companies. It's an educational project, and we're planning to give lectures and tell about history of
master classes. Also, we would like to introduce everybody to the magic of the theater's world, to show old traditions, how to play, how to do, and at the same time introduce new technologies. I visited for the first time of my life Mariinsky Theater, which was called Opera and Ballet Kirov Theater, when I was 3.5 or 4 years old. My father was a lover of theater, a fan. He could sing opera arias. Nevertheless, he was academic, he was scientist, and worked with mathematics, physics, and chemistry. He brought me to the Mariinsky Theater, and I still have a book dated till 1964 and written to my daughter Elena, who was first time in Mariinsky Theater on this date. When I was 7 to 8 years old, one of my parents' friends, Moscovite designer and painter, who often came to St. Petersburg where we lived, he cut me first my own toy theater. It was cardboard type of passepartout. And on the stage of this small theater, I presented a small fairy tale, Italian fairy tale, Fantagiro. My mom didn't want me to become a part of the theatrical world, and she did everything to put me on another way. And I didn't blame her, because it's a good profession to know languages and work with it. But if your destiny is a theater, you will become part of this, I'm sure. Nevertheless, you start maybe going on another direction. I worked as an interpreter and then representative in different countries of the world of agencies, touristic agencies, etc. But my way was permitting me to come back to the theater, because they offered me a job at the Mariinsky with a Spanish choreographer, head of Spanish National Ballet, by this time Jose Antonio. And I worked with him like interpreter assistant. My strong capacity in those times was to know the theater from inside and language. And I very quickly absorbed all the terms necessary to work in the theater, and they started to bring me to all the tours to Spain, Portugal, Italy, France, Latin America, Mexico, everywhere. I went with Mariinsky Theater. And practically it gave me a new profession. We realized producing this theater that it cannot be cheap. Because to make it like this when it's durable, it's for all your life. You can pass it from generation to generation. You should make it not in paper, but in wood, and wood of very good quality, to not allow this wood to go with humidity or other climate things to lose its shape. Then we used only good colors and also approved for kids. It's nothing dangerous, and there are no things which could harm little fingers of the toy theater players.
I think the multifunctionality of the theater also gives you more kind of powers for the magic. There's possibility for shadow puppetry, there's possibility for projection if you find a little projector to project, there's a possibility to play with your hands, you know, and play with the scale. We had the little performance one, we had one of the actors coming in here with even with their face. And that was, you know, it's also kind of magical.
And there is a lot of, you see, the
crosses, cuts in stage.
Cuts and plywood, which allow you to put inside whatever tree made of plywood of 3 millimeters.
Or a flower or a stick.
Or a stick or made of paper or cardboard.
I think this theater is made with so much love and dedication, and it took such a long path. It was like 25 years for you, 2-3 years for me, even though I'm a theater kid. So I grew up in the backstage of Mariinsky Theater, so I was also kind of brewing in this soup of culture and ballet, opera and ballet. But working on this toy theater, we've been really, as you said, a full-time job, working almost every day, searching for the right fabric for the curtain, for the right
size,
quality of the plywood, for the right size, for coming to different stage directors, set makers, discussing, having evenings of, you know, remembering the tradition of toy theater. So there's a big kind of history behind it, and a lot of kind of investigation and experimenting. So there's a lot of love put into it, and I think that you can feel it when you interact with it. So it's not just like a toy and we come and like you can start playing with it like wildly. You kind of do it with respect.
Actually, many famous writers like Andersen, Goethe, Lermontov, Tolstoy, many of them had the toy theater. It was a tradition mostly of aristocratic families to play with, and maybe Andersen would not become Andersen without playing with a small theater in his childhood, and then he played also being already old man. We made 50 theaters by now in St. Petersburg, and the opening night had place on 19th of December of 21. Then we decided to just slow down to correct some small things, because it's our perfectionism, I think, which didn't allow us to just keep producing. And when we finished this work, and we were thinking about International Theatre Day, 27th of March, to start a huge publicity campaign, the war started.
And then some months only news occupied our minds. And then we started to feel like a lack of something, because you cannot live all the time reading bad news and getting them. You have to do something besides help to refugees. We actually started to do this, but you have potential to do something that others cannot do. Everybody maybe can go to the shop and buy needed by refugees, but To make them performance, it's another thing, and we are thinking about it, how to make it happen. Now, because this performance is just born, we are showing it to our close friends, but we would show it to kids of the refugee centers.
We brought 2 theaters here into Tbilisi, and at some point in the summer we decided to make a little puppet show just by ourselves, handmade. So we made this Theo, the theater captain, performance by the book of Nina Dashevska. And now we're showing it to our friends. And we also have a set from 1894 sketches of Nutcracker that we want to show in December. So for the moment, our idea is forming into like making the showings, like little theater parties for friends and friends of friends at home. We also are thinking about giving little lectures. I think you have already started preparing some materials to maybe present it in some kind of cafes or, you know, culture spaces or, I don't know, bookstores. And then actually the language, at least we could do it in English or in 2 languages. Russian, and I can, for example, translate in English, and we discussed that. Which is also kind of applied to the performances. We can also adapt them to English at least. Maybe not Georgian right away, but at least do it international language. And the third thing that we've been discussing with some puppeteers here already, to make workshops, like series of workshops, like to show people how to play in toy theater. Not necessarily in Teatrino, because you still can do it out of cardboard box. It's not going to be as we think magical and multifunctional, but you can start from this and kind of try it out, and then maybe at some point kind of grow to getting you know, the solid Teatrino piece. At the moment we're kind of figuring out and looking for collaborations for people who will be interested to join our team. So it's as we say now, it's a kind of ocean of instability, and kind of people are trying to figure out how to plan where you can't plan, in the reality where you can't plan. For me, this Teatrino also played a safety ring kind of role. It was early March, and very early I left Russia because I had a theater project in Europe, and so I was afraid that I will be cut off from Europe. So I left, and I had a backpack with me and Teatrino in my hand. And then I arrived and I stayed at our mutual theater friends in Switzerland. And we, from the first days, I proposed the idea to make a little puppet show, to make a little kind of like a postcard in Teatrino. I just wanted to highlight how important it was for me, for my soul, and I think also for the hosts, for our friends, with whom we could discuss many things and many worries that we had. And it was like a therapy. So playing with Teatrino, and we ended up with like actually 40-second, 1-minute little piece. But it was a real therapy, working on it, making sure that lights are on. We had so many little, you know, cues to follow. And because of a small scale, you also have to be very careful, specifically careful with little details. So I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks that we worked on this 40-second little piece. And it was a very deep therapy and very inspiring. And I think we managed to bring some light in the total darkness that was and still is happening.